Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, yWhales. The world keeps spinning, and the crypto markets are they're entertaining, but they're not near as much fun as the NFT markets. And so I'm really lucky and privileged to have back with us MaxStealth, Bart and Trent from Down Under. I love working with the Australians. I think it's you guys just have such a great culture and outlook on life and everything else. We just got to fix these time zones, because either I'm suffering or you guys are kind of waking up early, and this isn't the way to do this. So Web3 is able to connect us, around globally in every way except for the time zones. So if at any point you guys see a project that has, kind of a single centralized, time window, I think that's the way we should really look at this here now. But pivoting over, right now we're coming out of we're in a bear. Bitcoin hit 18,000, coming down from 60. We're currently sitting today at 23. I always like to give the context of where we are right now in the market. And I'd say, there's been quite a hesitation and pullback on overall investments in the space. Now, that doesn't mean that there is not investments in the space or that everyone's run away like in previous bears and crypto winters. It's just becoming much more competitive, and it's also kind of really showcasing the good projects that have legs. And so really that's, again, what we're going to talk about today. And you guys have been on here before, but let's go ahead and Bart, just kind of give us a quick rundown of your background and how you got here today.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm one of the founders of MaxStealth, and my key role there is overseeing the investment and the portfolio management team. My background prior to that, I'd worked in a VC that focused on Microsoft-based Web2 products, dealing with enterprise, and also a family office that was dealing with emerging kind of SaaS and e-com platforms throughout Southeast Asia, so focused on Philippines there. Prior to that, my engagement with crypto, well, back then it was kind of an emerging ERC20 sort of platforms, was with Trent, and we traveled the world exploring the ICO craze of 2016, 17, and then the eventual pullbacks that gave us all a bit of reckoning. And yeah, there we were focused more so on the building side. So I had a venture studio with staffing in Vietnam, and we were heavily focused on building out products and using our existing development team to support what was then the Solidity-based ecosystem, and so much more.
A real quick note, as long as you brought up the ICO craze, because looking back on it, it's easy to go, oh my God, what were people thinking? None of these things had legs, and it was just clear FOMO and hype from day one. But looking back on the NFT market from last year, it was pretty much the same thing. It's like, hey, we're going to make, a AAA video game, and we're going to do all these things, and here, buy our 1 ETH NFTs to support this. And by the way, I've never built a video game, and I have no idea how to start building a video game, but I promise it's going to be good. And they would sell out. Like, was it really that similar to, the 17 ICO craze?
Exactly the same. I think that's a common theme that we do see in these markets. It's kind of now becoming a little bit more predictable as we start to mature as an ecosystem, that first off, we get a fad, which back then it was the ICO, now it's the NFT, and metaverse is now the next thing, building 1 million spaces that potentially, people will come to, otherwise maybe they won't. And then the real products come afterwards. So we get to see what the themes are going to be or what the prevailing trends are. And then over the next couple of years, the real products come out of that. So it's quite exciting now, I suppose, within that NFT market, that we're seeing real products being developed off the back of that craze, because there's now an awareness of what the possibility is within NFTs, and therefore people want to get involved. And similar with ICOs, that's what we saw, potential business cases, a lot of money being made and a lot of money being lost, and then real products built, which adoption is now slowly coming to. So very similar themes.
Awesome. Yeah. And we're definitely going to talk about the survivors of the crash right now, and kind of, again, of some amazing projects that were kind of in the darkness during the last bull run, that suddenly you're like, where have you guys been? So looking forward to chatting there. Trent, how you been, sir? So it's early. You haven't quite had your full cup of coffee yet, I understand. Normally I'm used to the lively Mr. Trent Barnes, but give us again a quick little backstory, and what kind of has got you excited today?
Great, thank you, Jay. Good morning. And so essentially one of the co-founders and partners of MaxStealth. So in charge of investor relations, fundraising, custody management, IC, deal flow. And really my background sort of probably came from in 2016, exited a business and became a man of leisure or a man of ledger, and went full-time into the blockchain and crypto space. I was introduced to crypto and more specifically Bitcoin by a Venezuelan friend. Venezuelans tend to understand the nature of money, inflation, store of value, and government overreach a lot better than others. So I got introduced in early 2017, co-founded the Blockchain Association of Australia, which is essentially a not-for-profit that was dedicated to growing, supporting, enhancing the local blockchain ecosystem here. You know, we brought in thought leaders from around the world to provide our local government, regulators, business, the developer community with the latest and greatest in the blockchain space. And this led to building out a global community of partners in the space, which then led in late 2017 to co-founding Zerocap, which started out as a VC, which invested in projects at an early seed stage and private token equity rounds. We were fortunate to have invested in a number of great projects, layer ones, platforms, learned many lessons, just as you mentioned when we're talking about the 2017-18 boom. So learn a lot of lessons from those years. During the bear market, Zerocap transformed from a VC into a full service digital asset crypto firm for sophisticated clients, whereby it was a really deep focus on providing a product suite of digital assets, crypto and Web3 technology, funds management, asset management, portfolio optimization, and so essentially providing regulated and spot access to a range of products. Notably, of recent, Zerocap had also partnered with the ANZ Bank, which is one of the big 20 banks globally, to launch the world's first, or not the world, sorry, this region's first bank-backed stablecoin, and we facilitated a trade of it. And one of our family offices performed a $30 million transaction on it as well. So outside of MaxStealth and Zerocap, which is the custodian and treasury manager of the MaxStealth fund, also climbing mountains, surfing, boxing, and sort of trying to get as much physical activity in my life to balance out all the cognitive activity.
You know, it's crypto never sleeps. You know that we work so much, and so it's true. You have to stay active. You have to do so many things. Although Bart, whatever you're doing, let's pull back on that because you've been injured too much lately. But I want to.
I was going to say, I definitely don't follow that adventure.
Yeah. So, but I want to take a second, and talk about what you had to do with Zerocap, Trent, because I think it's really relevant in the space. You guys set out to be VCs, and to be a traditional VC, there's millions of people around the world that understand that process. They understand how to invest in fintech. They understand how to invest in medtech, but it's very different asset class when you start talking about basically anything related to blockchain. It moves faster. There's a lot less experience, and so by kind of force, you had to expand your offerings because there was no one else that could speak to your portfolio companies or help bridge that gap between here's the technology and here's the business model, and they usually are missing that. What was that like, having to kind of continually grow and expand your offerings because you think that they would know these things, but no one's taught them?
Yeah, so having invested in quite a number of different transactions projects, we're quite a proactive VC and wanted to ensure that we were sort of de-risking the investment by providing as much support and partnerships, strategic advice as possible. And so working with projects, one of the key sort of problems that we saw was actually trying to get their money into the traditional banking system. And so because of one of the partners of Zerocap came from an FX and commodities trading background, had his own trading prop firm, we're fortunate enough to have had a banking rails globally. And so we started to facilitate a number of different OTC deals for a lot of these projects. where the projects had raised ether primarily, and they needed to liquidate. And so we were able to liquidate the raise and then be able to send that to them to their bank safely, because I'm pretty sure it happened, globally from what we saw, but in Australia, debanking had become a real problem with crypto companies. Anything whereby, I've been kicked out of banks for being a founder of a crypto company and been banned from ever opening up an individual account again. And so that's how it all really sort of started. And that's when we really started to look at the space, and we saw that there'd been a lot of capital on the sidelines waiting to enter the space, but they didn't have the institutional protections or sort of secure access points. And that's how that initial investment crypto bank or crypto firm thesis really built out.
Yeah, it is absolutely astonishing in this day and age that just the fact that you're not doing anything illegal, you're following the letter of the law, you're an upstanding citizen. And we had the same thing, being denied a simple bank account. Even us, we had to go back and forth, and Silvergate, which is the crypto friendly bank, it took 6 months, for us to open a bank account. And, in the entire process, it really is showcasing just how scared TradFi is of DeFi and the cryptocurrency space to be that aggressive against, listen, KYC us all day long, go through all these things. But it's really interesting to watch the space evolve. You guys have been here for a while, and, I generally like to think that things are getting better. 2017, there was probably everyone thought, hey, we're going to make it. And then we hit that crypto winter. And then we had the last bull run, and everyone thought, okay, we're in the clear. And now we're back here again. And I'd still say we're, compared to 2017, that we're still in a bull run compared to where you guys were in that kind of downfall. What are kind of some of the main pieces that started to showcase life? Because you guys have been around for so long, and I like for our listeners to really understand, what were the first indicators that you guys start to see that, like, the money's coming in, the mood is changing, and it seems like hope is going to come back towards something that looks like a bull? Bart, you want to take a stab at this?
Yeah. Look, on my hope, maybe I'm too optimistic through what we see, but the hope side of things hasn't diminished. Like what we see in terms of transaction and players coming to the ecosystem, that's accelerating. And the amount of money that is pouring in at this current point, like into the funds that are being announced, you're looking at $200 to $500 million funds every other week that are being announced. In a matter of 4 years ago, there wasn't a fund that was over $500 million. Now there's a number of. So on that side, I think the hope is still there as to where the market is heading. The key turning point for myself in terms of where I really saw that we were part of a movement that was going to last were the number of institutions that were adopting their legacy business models to accommodate what is Web3. Over the coming years, it's no longer going to be Web3. It's just going to be what we utilize as the web. Like, we don't call it Web2, Web1. It's a great marketing trick, like metaverse, to say that we're in Web3 so that we can differentiate and we can track where we are in terms of how companies are adopting. But if we look at what the next strategy is, and that was one of my key reasons for moving on from the previous VC firm, was the thesis of investment that they had was very focused towards enterprise and what was fast becoming legacy tech already. And we looked at the products that were coming out in what's Web3. They could, provide solutions without updating all of the mainframes, the legacy infrastructure they had. And you're starting to have those discussions with major enterprise where they would be bypassing those Web2 style technologies. When we're looking now at storage, we can now look at IPFS file storage on a Filecoin network rather than only looking at Amazon and Azure. Is it there yet for general adoption? Not, but it is a discussion point. So the fact that those points are coming up and we're looking at VR, we're looking at, social tokens, we're looking at employee option strategies in tokens. Like these are conversations that are happening in enterprise. So for myself, that really is what shows that we are part of something that's going to last through a pullback, a bear, a bull, wherever it might sit in terms of the the market cycle.
You know, and Trent, you and I and Bart as well, like I talk to you guys all the time. You're one of my like go-tos for like what's going on in the, you know, metaverse kind of NFT world. And so, you know, I know it's not a technical question, but we kept saying all throughout this last bull run, like NFTs without utility, like what are you really buying? And now I can't literally see a single article that doesn't include the word token gate, you know, token gating. And I agree with that. I think that's great. You know, let's use them for something. You know, where are you seeing the best kind of looking for utility cases for some of these NFT projects that are yet to come online? And are we seeing some of the past projects that maybe didn't have utilities in the past starting to try to integrate those now that we've seen things like Shopify integrate token gating and a number of others?
Well, I think what would be good is particularly some of the projects that we've been investing in. And I might hand this one to Bart. If Bart, in regards to, I guess, some of the utility coming out of some of the projects we're investing in, and it might be worthwhile, maybe after we talk about this, probably just to give a little bit more about the, I guess, our investment thesis and strategy and just sort of how we're approaching the space. But Bart, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, look, I think the NFT utility discussion is emerging in the sense that where we say there's utility, let's look at Bored Ape Yacht Club, you know, the utility of going to a social event. They tried to do a dating app a while ago, but lo and behold, that didn't work because of the demographics of ownership. You know, like the utility thing is still something, if we had a look at those that are part of the mainstream media discussion, is something that's evolving. But in terms of what is the potential, and this, I suppose, takes us back to that previous point that you made about ICO craze 2016, 2017, we got all of these things that were potential businesses if they were implemented correctly, but they were not. Now we're seeing a method of development where we can have adoption. So if we look at the NFTs and the utility that's potentially there, over the next couple of years where we're back into that build cycle, I would say that we're going to see a lot more utility that translate to partnerships with major enterprise. If we're looking at the NFT of a travel token that partners with a major airline or a engagement strategy with a major football club, be that NFL, soccer, Australian rules, whatever we might call football, you know, you're going to start to see a lot of those fan engagement strategies go through rather than them just being take from fans and give to football clubs, which is what we saw this cycle. Like, we are going to start to see a partnership where if you have your membership, you buy your NFT for one Heineken beer, you can get airdropped 5 more of them, and then you get a free one at the end. And that then shows that you've been at a number of games, which can then translate to a Roblox, or, well, not Roblox, it's a closed ecosystem, but a sandbox scarf for your child who doesn't anymore want to watch a 90-minute football match on the TV. They'd prefer to watch it in a recreation on Sandbox using tracking data in the virtual stadium, and they want to have their Arsenal scarf that they can wear to that. Like, these are the sorts of things that are, you know, we're having discussions on and are coming into enterprise with those sort of utility plays. And I suppose on my end, that's what I would say is most exciting now, that we're seeing that physical digital world come together, and the planning for the next 3 to 5 years, because adoption is not there yet. If we really look at it, adoption is coming. So how much utility can you have when you've got 3,000 unique owners of a 10,000 item collection? Like, you need 10,000 hourly users, not owners.
Yeah,
there's
you guys have talked, you know, we've talked a lot about this kind of where are we in the cycle? What is adoption? And so there's 2 stats I always look at. Number one is on chain right now, self-custodied, there's only 1.5 million Ethereum wallets that have 1 or more ETH in it. If you drop that down to 0.1 ETH, it's only 7 million. I mean, I'm responsible for at least, you know, 100 of those. And so, you know, the idea that there's anyone is able to kind of bring mainstream in. Yeah. Like, I think Top Shots, it was great. Like, the fact that people even think that there's value in an NFT or excited about an NFT, the fact it's a household name, to me, that's a win. Let's take it where we can get it. The challenge is that we saw this kind of, you know, the YouTubers and all the Instagrammers just pumping these garbage projects, which never had any legs to begin with. And, you know, as a full disclosure, there any time that, myself, I'm looking at a project or for investment myself or yWhales, like I call these two guys because you guys have been in it so long and you understand the difference between hopium and actual solid teams and backgrounds and doing a lot of really amazing due diligence. Trent, I will say, when we were looking at a project to invest in and we brought you guys in, the comments and feedback we got from you were so different than our own theses, and a lot of this is just your time in the space. What are kind of like those top three things that you just immediately, the first time someone's pitching you, that just in your head, you've got to check these three boxes, otherwise you're just going to pass?
I think it's one of those things after, and should be noted as well, the business that I exited in 2016 was an IT recruitment business. So it had very much been a background built on sort of human personnel, profiling people, getting an understanding and, their background track record, getting to the crux of exactly what it is that they, the individuals did. But on the flip side is understanding a business, getting to the crux of what comprises this business in terms of the type of attributes that top candidates would want to go and join. And so I think what it really comes down to, and, I think Bart would share the same view because, has a similar background as well with, technology consulting, is that it always comes down, what I'd say number one is the people involved, the founders. And that's one of those things where after you've built up a career of sort of unconscious competence within profiling, what is this person telling me? Let's get to the crux of exactly what it is they're saying. Do they have the attitude, the aptitude, the skill set to break out and launch a successful project? Because they're not necessarily going to have the track record, because the crypto and Web3 primarily are the domain of the younger generations, Gen Y and Gen Z. So you can't go through the standard sort of qualifying or quantifying metrics of what you would typically do in, let's say, traditional equity investments. And I think what it really comes down to as well is understanding that generation, because, you're talking to 21-year-old founders, 22-year-old founders that are raising millions, which, wouldn't necessarily have happened in traditional finance unless there was not to the scale that it does in crypto. So number one would be, I guess, the human element. And there's a whole sort of cascade of, or a whole cache of sort of subpoints to that, but I'd say humans. Secondly, what is the problem that they're trying to solve? Because particularly in the space, you do speak to a lot of projects that are launching tokens for token's sake, just like in 2017 and 18 was launching a white paper and decentralizing it when it didn't really need to be decentralized. And then thirdly, I would say that it would have to be community and sentiment, which is probably a much bigger driver in this space. And this comes back to that first part where I talked about, the generations, is actually understanding that Web3 may not be for baby boomers. It may not even, necessarily be for my generation, which is Generation X. Millennials were the first digitally native generation. Gen Zs have grown up and with it, and they're basically cyborgs because technology has become augmented to their.
I've got two Gen Zers, and they cannot differentiate between real life friends and online friends. It's the same, like it's just a different communication channel, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, so I think really understanding that sentiment, and understanding that memes, like how important memes are in this space. Because if you look at meme, it's really essentially a unit of culture. And sort of it jumps from mind to mind of different individuals. And if you look at particularly NFTs and how they propagated and how this whole space sort of has grown sort of exponentially. It's really this idea or pattern or behavior that sort of reproduces itself, just jumping from individual to group to individual to multiple groups. And for the most part, we don't even know the origin of them, but we've seen many of them, Pepe the Frog, Dogecoin, but even just like the war cries of the crypto community, diamond hands, and particularly when you're looking at the GameStop short squeeze and how that turned into stonks, and it brought about this like the shift in like the community where you could crowdsource sort of like this fevered sort of focus and target, and it's like, yeah. So I think really like understanding sort of, I guess, those three things and sort of how memes play into society and culture, I think is important.
I know how old I am when I appreciate memes, but I have no desire or thought to go, what I'm going to do today is go make 100 memes and post these out on myself. It is part of their language. It is part of their culture. I appreciate it. We in our Discord channels, we use them all the time. But I just have this thing. It's from decades of business that you have your serious face on, and then you can go play on the other things. And I really struggle with kind of aligning these two.
I think community is, and that's what's really driving, you can probably say, Web3 as a decentralized internet, is that one of the components of it is, these communities that are building out where value is accruing to the community rather than a centralized entity. And so I think just by virtue of how the culture of this space, launching projects into it, is one thing I've noticed when we're assessing deals is that a lot of, well, I can't say a lot, generalization, but there are a number of projects that are only really sort of focused on one side of the equation, which is, let's build a marketplace because we have X that we can show on the marketplace. Where they haven't looked at the buy side, like where is the community, the engaged community that's going to come through and actually purchase, XY asset or XY NFT. It was similar to 2018, 2019 when tokenization or fractionalization of assets, so real estate fractionalization, there were plenty of projects that were launching that were fractionalizing multi-$100 million commercial real estate, but there just weren't any buyers. And so they hadn't built out the community then. And so I think as we evolved into, throughout 2021 with the rise of Web3, community is the foundation. It underpins everything that we do in this space. So if you're not addressing community with a project that you're launching, then you aren't going to necessarily, it's unlikely you're going to be able to receive funding, because that's one of the key things or the key points that VCs are looking at or investors are looking at. But at the same time, it's your growth and your survival is dependent on that.
No, and I'll say you guys, the two of you, have done an amazing job of building your own, just kind of VC community around yourselves. One of the things I've found since entering the Web3 space full time about 1.5 years ago, compared to fintech, compared to medtech, and compared to retail and everywhere else I've been, generally it's very hostile towards competitors or peers, whatever the case is. Web3 and you guys entirely embody this, are so open, so welcoming, and there's times where we're working on something, we'll casually be talking to you guys, and you're like, that's great, but you really should do this, this, and this. And there's no, long-term benefit for you guys to take the time out of your days and do these things. But you've built this amazing network really around the globe of just, Trent and Bart are just great guys. And it's not a formal relationship that you have. There's nothing there, but like anyone, I hear all the time, people like, yeah, I messaged Brent and got this, look at this long email I got back. And so I really applaud you guys for being kind of that, the elder statesman, I would say, of Web3 and kind of embodying that relationship.
I think that's one of the core elements of Web3 is that we've seen a lot of failures with the traditional business, and it realistically comes back to the point you made about community. you need a diverse range of VCs to be sitting on a cap table, or investors to be sitting on a cap table to make a product successful. Especially with our approach being that we are an index style fund with a very large number of investments, it serves our benefit to assist others and to work with other VCs, to work with other people such as yourself and networks to make sure that we can provide you with products that meet your client base or your partnership base, but also therefore it allows for that leveraging of multiple portfolio managers, multiple analysts, that we can all share those things. And there is, especially when we're looking at this stage, at early stage token-based funds, but then later stage when we're looking at that equity venture, which is where we're all heading, as the check sizes get bigger, we need multiple players there. So while I would say that Trent and I probably just enjoy talking to people and making sure that we understand what's going on, I do think it's a bit of a theme of the industry that we are pretty happy, and we've grown tired of the traditional ecosystems where it's traditional VC or PE saying is you eat what you kill. Well, that ethos I think is a bit dead in this ecosystem, which is where you now have DAOs. A DAO, the whole point of it is you're not constrained to one organization. You can work anywhere in the world. You can work whatever hours you want. It's voted on by the organization. It's a community-based venture. And that, I hope prevails through in the investment mandates of firms coming into the space as well. Otherwise, we'll end up in the same mess as a lot of the growth stage VCs that have been deploying for the past 3 to 5 years right now, where it's just competing against each other, driving up people's valuations. And I've got no idea how they're going to get any liquidity on their investments, not to knock the industry, but it's, that competition doesn't help anyone. Working together.
And again, we entirely agree with, so we love hanging out with you guys. And let's kind of just circle around so everyone understands like the types of wins that we're looking for. And Trent, you and I have had some good conversations about this too. A 10 to 20%, kind of increase is we're not here for that. When you guys are looking for moonshots, and really, when you're talking early stage, you guys have your performance metrics on your fees range from kind of a 200% increase to a 1,500% increase. Talk through the mentality of when you're trying to apply the theory and logic that you even have to have a cap table level, or not a cap table, a fee level for a 1,500+% return.
Yeah, so it's been interesting speaking with investors that have come from the traditional space when they look at the fee schedule. And yet it's sort of not uncommon when you're looking at the crypto space. And so essentially, just for listeners, we have a $50 million fund, and our fees are 2 and 20 up to 3x return. And then it's 30% from a 3x to a 15x, and then it's 40% from a 15x and up. And so how we calculated that is that it's not, and I'm just conscious because it's a lot easier when you're talking one-on-one with someone, because you can gauge what sort of returns you can talk about. Because a lot of listeners, when you talk about you're shooting for 50x or 100x, will go, that's ridiculous. That's some like wild hopium. And yet we have examples of those, but they are not, it's not like there is a plethora of them happening in the space. So they're, the unicorns that you're really shooting for. The average return, and I'm just conscious of what I can and can't say, but we know what the track or the data states from a track record. And so that's how we've sort of structured that fee schedule.
Yeah, and again, it's more a matter of the fact that it exists. There's many more unicorns right now in Web3 than any other asset class I'm aware of. And you can go out, and if you had this fee structure in a fintech or a medtech or a edutech, people would just go like, well, you might as well put dust on that. It's never going to happen. Like I haven't seen that in 10, 20 years, but it happens consistently in Web3. However, it is, that boom, they go up, but they also can go bust relatively easily. So, that's where it really comes down to having the time in the space, which is so important.
Actually, this comes back to a previous point that you made as well with the utility base of your NFT. So I'm going to deviate back to that for a second. So one of the big things is if you own your NFT, that utility play that you can then have is if you have a MasterCard branded with the NFT of the ecosystem. So say, for example, it's Fluff World, which is one of the ones that they are partnered with. What that allows is that you can then, once they have a token ecosystem, potentially earn rewards within that ecosystem based upon your spending on that MasterCard. So like you'd traditionally get a rewards, your points for your airlines, instead those points are going back to that metaverse-based ecosystem. So if we're looking at utility of your NFTs and how that can plug into your traditional day-to-day life, that's a pretty easy example of things that are being developed. They've developed a tier 1 relationship with MasterCard throughout the Asia Pacific region, which does give global access. Now with that, that's straight out of a 12-week accelerator into a tier 1 license with a global card distributor, of which I believe the only other tier 1 licenses in the region, I will have to check this, exist with the core banking institutions within Australia and New Zealand. Those sort of diamond, to develop that without the backing of an accelerator and the branding of something like that behind, it's a much harder slog to get to that point. So as a key example, that's definitely one that stands out over the past 3 or 4 months.
So you guys probably deal with this way more often than I do, although it happens every day where people come on and they go, I've invested, money in these NFTs and, I now I don't know what to do with them. Generally, I say, you have those conversations. You go, where did you hear about them? Why did you buy this? What do you have? And you go and look at their OpenSea wallet, and they've thousands, tens of thousands of dollars gone into projects that will never go anywhere. How do you guys help? How do we? I would say overall as the crypto community, how do we help to educate the overall masses that want to be involved? They want to like this asset class, but we're stuck with YouTubers and TikTokers that are pumping kind of dead projects already with just a pump and dump schemes. Like what's kind of the solution here to provide some actual voices and reasoning and education?
I think, and my thesis on this isn't exactly complete, but and this is coming back to that cultural differentiators in terms of how people consume information. And I think if we're trying to overlay what we've previously done in terms of, how do we get the expert or the same voices in the space, because you have a bunch of, TikTok influencers and YouTube influencers. Now, I think in terms of how Gen Y, millennials, Gen Z consume information, I think that is the platform. And as opposed to, the Web 2 narrative, which is where, value accrues in the hands of a few, it also trust accrues in the hands of a few in Web 2. But in Web 3, if we're looking at a value accrues to the community, essentially what we're going to have is just many voices all speaking up. And so I think what it does is it puts more the onus on the actual, the public, the audience, to discern who they would like to follow, who they would like to trust, and I guess who ultimately will be educating them. Because I think, and this has been something I've been thinking about, because it's easy to say, like, how do we get, for instance, like mass adoption? You can talk about accessibility, education, trusted access points, usability, experience, or user experience. Build for digitally native generations is probably what I would be saying, or would be one of my key points, because building for that really requires a different mindset. So I think it's going to be pretty wild out there in terms of how we consume information, because you got these influencers on YouTube, that are 22 years old, that are, dishing out financial advice, like they're dishing out burgers at In-N-Out, which is an American.
And they're much better at the burgers than they are the advice.
Yeah. Does that come back to education a little bit in terms of what at the moment our education system is teaching us is not that financial literacy? Let's really go to the core of what the issue is. And that, if we're going to the beauty of what we can hopefully develop with Web3, is we look at EdTech. Like, what are those EdTech platforms that are coming out? How do we encourage the youth? Like, youth unemployment, 16 to 24-year-olds, it's terrible within, you look at Western economies, exact figures in each jurisdiction, it's rising. So if we look, and there are platforms coming out in Web3, one of which is an outlier project, it's called Hundo. That's EdTech for Gen Z, focusing on that digital transformation, jobs for people within this emerging digital ecosystem. Like, how do we capture jobs for them? But that then brings awareness to things like, what is a token economy? What is an NFT? What is speculation? Because if you are working for a DAO and you're being paid in a DAO token, or maybe you're being paid in a stablecoin, that awareness is there. What is the custody over your wallet? So that even on the other side, we can then look at protecting those assets once someone holds them. How do they, the simple thing, like, even if we look back at 2016 to 2018, like, these guys raising $100 million and holding it all in ETH, rather than moving it $2, and all of a sudden that $100 million is now worth $10 million. How do they build their product? Like, these sorts of standard hedging things, which it's just not common. And that still shocks us every week, like how people are storing their assets. Zerocap, obviously, the custody and those custody solutions, which are coming about and becoming more retail accessible, people just aren't aware of. So if we're going to look at it, I think there is a solution, and EdTech within a Web3 environment is potentially something that will bring about
and you bring up a really good point. And I kind of, when I talk quite often, I say there's a lot of problems with Web3. To me, there's two really big ones that need to be solved right off the bat. One is bridges. There's got to be some standards there, and a lot of security built around them, because losing money just passing through, or that you think something's there on the other side holding that wrapped Bitcoin, that's a big loss. But I don't want to talk about that for a second. To me, the others is wallets. And at this point now, I have reviewed and talked to 100+ people that are currently in production making wallets that are the exact same as the wallets we have today. I don't need a better MetaMask. I need something to manage, the thoughts of a digital lifestyle. And a digital lifestyle, as you guys know, will involve hundreds, thousands, potentially tens of thousands of NFTs over your lifetime. And what do we got? We have a single source thing. It's like having email with nothing but an inbox. That's it. And there's no spam filters. There's nothing you can stop. I know you guys see a lot. Are we seeing anyone that's starting to figure out that there's a lot more to crypto and Web3 than, just holding, coins and tokens?
Yeah, definitely on that side. There's custody solutions coming through, like at the moment, that is a massive thematic that we're seeing over the past 3 to 4 months, is the tooling that covers that. Even going so far as wallets, starting to address that post-quantum environment, where how do we do a quantum-proof wallet? Like, what is the protection and the thoughts that need to happen there? And that's the key thing of, I always say it, the adults coming to the room, is that you've got these teams coming into the space now that have been building solutions, university research labs for the past 20 years. And these solutions are going to translate and actually have a real use case now in this Web3 world. So providing wallet solutions that are potentially quantum proof, that's one solution. But then if we're looking at different custody pieces, there's custody wallets that have a chain of legal authorizers on them that therefore allow for recovery through a designated global network of Trent, you can remember the word, it's like of legal officers who are legally accountable, and therefore, if they do not act in the essence of the protocol, they are subject to criminal charges on that front, and that can then provide you a recovery method so that you're not left with just a seed phrase. There is a process through the KYC within that ecosystem, and that product's actually going for a parachain auction on Polkadot at the moment. So there are solutions coming across custody, across recovery of wallets, that do make the adoption possible, because that's the core problem that we're kind of coming to here, is how do we have adoption when there's so many holes within the onboarding with the wallets, with the recovery of the wallets, lost assets. That's a massive issue that we're going to face, and the solutions are being brought forward. What is going to be the dominant solution? Well, I suppose that's what the next 3 to 4 years of build time is going to give us, and hopefully we come across enough of the projects and invest across a broad range to make sure that we're there on that journey.
That. I mean, that's exactly what's needed, and I hope that you're tracking some good projects on there. So I want to pivot over real quick to the Openverse. We'll use Jamie Burke's thing because I can't stand the word meta anymore since it was stolen from us. So, but in the open metaverse, or whatever it's going to end up being called, and I'll throw a thesis out for you guys that I'm starting to see this common theme. You know, you can view contents of the web on a desktop, and it shows it a certain way. If you have it on your mobile, it shows it, you know, kind of a mobile version. And I think that what I'm starting to see from my perspective, my view, is that meta, or the virtual reality, is just the fact that you're visiting a product, a web page, through a VR, AR experience. It doesn't have to be this siloed thing that only lives inside, you know, like Horizon, where everything has to come in to one world. Every company, potentially the same as they have a website now, will have some sort of metaverse exposure if they so choose. But it's going to take some time. Am I totally off base with this one?
Not at all.
No, not at all. And just a side comment on meta hijacking or taking over the the prefix of metaverse, and it's like JP Morgan rebranding his cash. So I think particularly with where we're going and we should really call it probably the proposed metaverse, right? Because I think that there is probably a technicality, or a proposed open metaverse, that there isn't, you know, we're in a quasi metaverse at the moment, being that we're interacting right now throughout this particular platform in a digital manner. And but the metaverse is a all-encompassing, you know, where you can go from world to world or from experience to experience. And really at the center of that is interoperability across multiple different platforms, but also property rights, so that I can take this water bottle, you know, from one world or one experience into another. I can take my Facebook memories somewhere else. I can take my World of Warcraft sword and take that into another game. And one of the projects we invested in, Medikey, allows for the rendering of a particular item or object within a particular space, where it might be, for instance, a pen in one world, but then you take it into a game and it's a sword and it renders. Or you might have a particular car where if you take from Decentraland into Somnium space into Facebook, it all sort of renders according to the environment that it's in. So I think that, you know, the internet really wasn't designed to provide the immersive experiences required for the internet. It was designed to basically send files and have sort of one server talk to another. So I guess this immersive metaverse, really, that if we do achieve that, this proposed open metaverse, then it's really going to be the evolution of the internet, our experience of it, how we interact on a day-to-day basis. I've actually got an Oculus here, but it's it's one of those things it's great because it's like a great game. You know, I can play Rocky and I can fight Rocky Balboa or Apollo Creed. And I'm interested to see how this evolves into being a method to be able to go and work with your co-workers in a digital world. And I mean, I've got some thinking that, and maybe we'll get onto this in a bit, but just around the future of it all and where this is all going. But
no, I would say that the more time you spend kind of in Web3 and understanding this interoperability, the ability for me to say, this is my wallet, this is my assets, and being able to log in and use these. And so I've got a teenage son. He's just turned 15. I got another 10-year-old boy. And so suddenly they're good for Call of Duty. Like, they want to play the good games. And thank God, because I was done. Fortnite I can never get into, but you want to do custom Call of Duty, like, let's go. You know, I'm from back in the day. And the thing that was so shocking is here they are downloading 2, 3, 4, 5 different versions of Call of Duty. And it was just amazing that even the achievements that they had, like nothing transferred from one to the next. And as I'm playing this, I go, my God, this is so simple. This is their own ecosystem. And it's not even recognizing as we bounce back and forth between these games that we're playing in these things. And so the idea, and my one son, the 10-year-old, he wanted this one skin. I said, well, can you go buy it from someone else? He goes, no, you can only buy it from their store. That's the biggest change we're going to see. We're going to, you're going to see, right now the games, I think that we're familiar with most of them, not talking fluff world, but some of the really kind of prehistoric metaverse, not metaverse, blockchain games. We're going to look back and say that was a great start. But the idea that we have to see blockchain move into AAA games is definitely coming. And I know a lot of people are working on it, but it's going to be interesting to see who gets there first. And I think you guys have invested in a few projects that have the potential to get there.
Yeah, there's one specifically we just recently closed, which is Uncaged Studios out of Israel. So they did Monkey Ball, which was fastest selling NFT. I know you say the names. It's always laugh-inducing. But that was the fastest selling NFT package that went out on Solana. But the guys that are behind that, again, it's the adults come into the room. They were the founders of Playticker, which is a NASDAQ-listed gaming studio. That game is developing quite rapidly and is due out this year. So if you look at where that's coming and the level of community engagement, we're not looking too far into the future. There's obviously been a lot of setbacks, not obviously, but there have been setbacks this year for a number of the AAA rated games. Hacks, if we look, or not hacks, but exposures, I suppose, of their ecosystems. If we look at Illuvium, they had an instance a few months ago, which has set them back about 3 months based on current reports. So, but the AAA games, it's not too far into the future based upon those current discussions. And Uncaged is definitely one that's leading the pack there. It's brought some really thought-leading individuals from the gaming ecosystem into blockchain. They've also previously founded a layer one, which was Koji. So they understand what is required to have a successful both blockchain and gaming studio, which if we're looking at de-risking of an investment, that's it's a pretty good combination. Some pretty sizable leads in that round as well. So it was one of the ones that we're quite happy to be involved in.
And also probably to speak to gaming guilds, the rise of gaming guilds.
No, go hit that one, because to me, now you're combining blockchain gaming with DAOs and community. These are going to be some of the most powerful forces on the planet once they get their act together. And I give Gabby at YGG a ton of credit for really founding this entire asset class. But now we're seeing a lot happening with Illuvium and others in the space that are going to be just again beasts that are very professionally well organized. You want to talk a little bit about your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think you had Darren Smorgan on with his gaming guild Palemus. We were one of the investors in that. But I think what gaming guilds really do is they address a couple of sort of key points required for the space. The first one is, so you have an NFT or you have a gaming asset, what do you do with it? If you are, not necessarily holding it to go and play it 24/7, but you're holding it from an asset appreciation perspective. So there are, you could say, gaming guilds, or what's also coming about, and there's a little bit of a blurred line, is these NFT marketplaces as well, where you can actually put your NFT assets or your gaming assets on. They can be lent out, but the guild can also play them. The guild can provide their own principal assets to be, to build out, sort of like a championship team that goes up against other guilds. And so I think it addresses, what you do with NFT assets. So you can join guilds, you can become part of a bigger community, which we keep coming back to that point around community. And that second point, which is uplifting the community, because you have players that are gaming enthusiasts that don't have the assets, and the gaming guilds are able to provide those, and they're able to provide basically a remuneration structure that helps to uplift. And as we saw with Axie Infinity in the Philippines, where you could earn more playing Axie than you would, the average wage. And so I think gaming guilds are going to continue to get bigger. I think from a counterparty risk perspective, that's all being addressed now. And this comes back to the point that we're talking around custody and wallet technology and infrastructure. Because if you have all your assets in one particular wallet, then that becomes a honeypot. And as we've seen some of the hacks in the space, and there's a lot of projects that are aiming to address that through smart contracts and being able to hold assets, in a segregated manner. At Zerocap, we provide custody of different assets where you can change the permissions, where you can have people play the NFTs or play the gaming assets, but they're not able to transfer the assets out of custody, and it remains within, whilst it's under Zerocap's control, it's insured as well. So it provides, particularly for sort of high value assets. So I'd say gaming guilds are going to be something to watch, because following on from what Bart was just talking about with studios and these AAA games and gaming studios that are going to be releasing, I think we have it's like the tip of the iceberg of what we've seen.
Yeah, and listen, we could continue going on with this for hours, but my day's ending and your day is beginning, so we're going to kind of, I'd just like to give you guys a quick second to kind of wrap up. Any thoughts? Any kind of, you guys see so many projects. Alpha Drop is easy for you guys, but again, speaking to the business leaders around the globe that are interested in this space, what are just a couple points that they should be looking at or thinking about when they're either dreaming about building or investing in this asset class? I'll start with you, Bart.
I suppose the key thing that excites me the most, and where I'd say you see the most growth in the industry, is that emerging markets. Like for Web3, we look, I think, exact number, it's about 880% growth last year of crypto, or 880% increase in adoption. But most of that comes from the emerging markets. And if we look at where the major opportunity is, it's capturing that youth, as Trent mentioned, those people that grow up with the device in their hand that are technology native. And those markets of Africa, Latin America, India, Pakistan, the number of individuals there that are under the age of 30 rather than the aging populations of the West, where it's getting from 34 to 36 to 38 as the average age, that's the opportunity within this industry for us that we see, and what we really are trying to capture with our investment thesis and the opportunities that we are really going after, because the numbers are just...
If you have a resource to help me understand the Gen Zs, please send it over, because I struggle every day with two that live in my house.
The numbers are kind of my limitation there. I'll stop at understanding what drives them on a day-to-day basis. The meme society, I think you're probably more active than I am on that. So definitely going to step back from that conversation.
Trent, any parting words or thoughts for emerging entrepreneurs in the space?
Well, I think it's really having a good grasp of Web3, because I think there are a lot of different, sort of definitions of it. And so how do you grasp something where, different communities refer to it in different ways? But I think if we look at some of the key aspects of Web3 is, ownership. Web3 is open and community focused. It's essentially the reallocation of value from the centralized hands of a few to the content creators, users of the many. NFTs allow for complete ownership of digital assets and tradability to open marketplaces. And so I think, ownership would be one. Identity, where you can have single logins to all platforms, no more need for multiple logins to your Facebook, YouTube, Google. Basically control how you're represented in the decentralized internet and the open metaverse. And I think native payments, which is something that's going to be a big, will provide a big change in the user experience, because Web 2 wasn't built for, the infrastructure wasn't built for, Web 2 was built for traditional finance and payment systems. Whereas on Web 3 in this trustless world that we're in, permissionless payments, through the use of tokens and cryptocurrencies, and there are going to be a multitude of them. And so I think, so there's some of the key aspects that I would say, but having a Web3 strategy, particularly for businesses, enterprises, and a number of investors that have come into our fund have come in, for one of several reasons. One is to learn about Web3 because of the projects that we're investing in, so for their personal education. Two is to build out a Web3 strategy for their businesses or their enterprises. And third one is basically to get co-investment rights to the projects that we're investing in. Once again, coming back to the community, I think something that you both touched on is that there is just a really collaborative element to this whole community. And so for entrepreneurs or businesses or anyone looking to build in the space, I think there's no shortage of good voices out there, but I think it's trying to discern who those good voices are, because there's just a plethora of them.
Absolutely love it. For anyone that's interested and wants to invest with MaxStealth or just kind of chat with you guys further, what's the best way to find you?
Contact information. We can probably leave at the end of this and put some links, but just email is best. It's bart@maxstealth.com and Trent and MaxStealth.
Absolutely fabulous. Thank you for swinging around. Don't go anywhere yet. But for all you yWhales, thank you guys as always. This is Trent and Bart with MaxStealth. And really, for anyone that's even thinking about investing or building in the space, and you just listened to this entire podcast, go back and listen to it again, because the answers they're giving really are very thoughtful. And there's a lot more in here than just kind of touch and go. So thank you guys again, and really looking forward to chatting here again in the future. So peace out, yWhales.